You know, kids can be really horrible. Really horrible. I remember when we were at school, we used to call redheads, I think we used to call them gingers, gings or ginger. Like that was meant to be, a terrible thing. They're a ginger. And for some reason, redheads, they often, not always, they often got bullied a little bit. But now as an adult, I don't remember at any point as an adult seeing any other adult picking on somebody who is a redhead, because we grow up and actually realise, redheads are quite beautiful people. We mature and we grow and we realise that just because they may be a very small group of people doesn't make them a bad group of people. In fact, that can have its bonuses. When I was a child, I used to wear glasses. I wore glasses since the age of 4, 5, and I used to get picked on for wearing glasses. Quite a lot, actually. Got called nerd and geek and gay and puff, and, largely because I wore glasses, but not only, also I was sometimes a little bit flamboyant, and so I get picked on for that. But being a redhead is a characteristic, it's not a race. Wearing glasses, it was something I had to wear, it was a reflection of my short-sightedness, it was a characteristic that I had. There's not a race of people who wear glasses. There are people of all races who wear glasses, and indeed there are people of different races who are redheads. It's most common amongst white people, but there are redheads of other ethnicities, believe it or not. I'm a minority within white people because, as well as wearing glasses, I'm also green-eyed. And green-eyed is the eye colour with the fewest number of people on the planet. But it's not a race. We're not a race of people. Unfortunately, people tend not to pick on people with green eyes. But I was picked on because I wore glasses over my green eyes. Funnily enough, as I've gotten older, as an adult, I'm never been picked on because I wear glasses. And in fact, nowadays, it's quite a cool thing, even amongst young people. I've seen school students wearing fake glasses without any glass in them because they think it's a cool thing to be. So things do change over time. And as I've just illustrated, the situation for me as a glasses wearer got better as I got older. And seemingly, from my experience, the situation for people who are redheads get older. In fact, it's quite cool as well, as I say, to be a redhead nowadays. So they tend not to suffer from too much discrimination or prejudice for being redheads. Thank goodness, because nobody should have to suffer prejudice for any kind of characteristic that they're born with. In pre-civil rights America, so before the 1960s, Martin Luther King era, black people had to sit at the back of the bus. Irish people, of which there were many in America, or people of Irish descent, Jewish people, of which there were also many, and there are also many in America, and travelers, which I'm sure there were probably some people of traveler descent in America, they didn't have to sit at the back of the bus because the vast majority, unless they were black, but the vast majority of Irish people, Jewish people and travelers are not black, they're white. Not all Jews are white, there are black Jews, but they wouldn't have had to sit at the back of the bus because they were Jewish. They had to sit at the back of the bus because they were black. That's not to say that Irish people, Jewish people and travelers do not suffer from forms of prejudice and discrimination, because they absolutely did and they absolutely still do. In this example, the fact they were Irish, Jewish and travelers had no impediment to them being able to sit at the front of the bus, because they were classed within that racial division as being white. Same as in apartheid South Africa. There were Irish people of Irish descent, there are many Jewish people in apartheid South Africa, and there are probably people of traveller descent, but that didn't act as an impediment to them being able to vote. They could still vote. Black people could not. Of course, during the height of the transatlantic slave trade, there were no Irish people or Jewish people or travellers who were put onto transatlantic slave ships, enslaved, and then sent over to the Caribbean or the Americas to be slaves. Unless, of course, they were black. It's quite possible that there were black people who were Jewish, who had been caught and enslaved and sent, but they weren't caught because they were Jewish. They were caught because they were black. The thing about being black is that you can't really hide it. It's not like a black person could have sat at the front of the bus And then a police officer came on and said, I know you're sat at the front of the bus, but I'm not sure you're actually white. Can you prove to me that you're white? I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have had to go through that bureaucratic nightmare. I'm sure he would have just said, you're black, you need to go to the back of the bus. In the same way that in apartheid South Africa, a black person on a whites-only beach couldn't have said to a police officer in South Africa, I am black, but I identify as white. And the police officer said, okay, fine. No, they were black. Why? Because they were black. The same as in the height of slavery. I'm pretty sure there were no slave owners who thought, you know what, I've bought this slave and I mean, they look black, but I think they might be white. I want my money back. I don't think that ever happened. I don't think anybody doubted the fact that their slave was black. You may have caught on to the fact that I'm pretty much quoting from a letter written by Diane Abbott, Labour MP, now running to again be a Labour MP, finally, after much debate, who was kicked out of the Labour Party for a year because of this letter that she wrote, which she apologised for. I'm sure she was forced to apologise for, because I wish she hadn't. Because everything she writes here is fact. At no point does she say the racism that black people face is worse than the discrimination and prejudice that Jewish people or Irish people or travellers face. She doesn't say that here, at no point. And as many people point out, quite rightly, Diane Abbott did not mention the Holocaust. And you know what? She would have been silly if she did. Because the Holocaust and what happened to Jews during the Holocaust proves the point exactly. And the point that Diane Abbott is obviously trying to make is that black people suffer racism their whole life. Hopefully not every single minute of their whole life. I hope they get respite. And I hope no black person suffers any racism. But the reality is that they do, and they have to deal with that their whole life. From the moment they leave their front door, they cannot hide the fact that they are black. You can't put them in a group of 100 people and say, oh my God, of white people, and say, oh my God, which is the black person? You can do that with an Irish person, a Jewish person, and a traveller. Now, you might be able to identify the Jewish person or the Irish person or the traveller some of the time, but not all the time. And there are people who say, well, but Jews look a certain way. But there are plenty of Jews who don't look that certain way that people think they look. And there are plenty of non-Jews who look like they could be Jews. What we do know is the vast majority of Jews are white. There are black Jews, and they also have to deal with anti-Semitism as well as being black. But the thing is, you can hide the fact you're Jewish. They shouldn't. Nobody should have to hide the fact that you are what you are. But they can. Most secular Jews, you can't identify them as being Jewish anyway. They don't wear a Star of David necklace necessarily. They don't wear a kippah. They don't have peyot because they're not Hasidic Jews. So they're not wearing anything that identifies them as Jewish, in which case they just look like another white person. And they can pull off being another white person if they were in a crowd of other white people. Now, an Irish person may have a voice, but just like me, I can do an Irish accent, they could do an English accent. They can do things to not be Irish. But a black Irish person who could hide being Irish couldn't hide the fact that they were black. So let's go back to the Holocaust. People say, well, she didn't bring up the Holocaust, that was the worst thing, and Jewish people obviously suffered every single minute of the day being Jewish under the Nazis. Yeah, they did. And you know how the Nazis did it? They came up with a system of identifying Jews. Why? Why would they need to come up with a system of identifying Jews just by looking at them? I wonder. Let's think about it. Let's now explain how they did it, because it wasn't magic. What they did was they made Jews in all the occupied territories wear either a badge that in Germany said Jude, in the Netherlands said Jud, in France said Juif, and so on. In different territories, it would identify them both with a yellow Star of David and with the word Jew. In Poland, and I believe in some other Eastern territories, they had to wear an armband. It was a white armband with a blue Star of David to identify them as being a Jew. You know why? Because if they didn't wear it, you can't always identify who is a Jew. Why? Because they're white, most of them, and they look like non-Jews. There was, however, under the Nazis, another group of people, a very small number, mostly residents of the Rhineland area of Germany, a lot of them who were children of German women who had had relationships with French soldiers, actually. And there were several hundred, I believe, up to around 1,000 or a couple thousand, children who were black. Do you know what they didn't need to wear under Nazi occupation? They didn't need to wear a badge that said Schwarz, black. Do you know why? Because they're black. It's simple, really. Now you can accuse Diane Abbott of bad maths. You can accuse me of bad maths. But you can't accuse her of being wrong about this. She's black. Who am I to question the life experience of a black person? A woman who's been an MP since the 80s and has all her life, despite the many things she's done with her life, always received racism for being black. I didn't need to look up Wikipedia and read, oh, Diane Abbott, she's got black parents. Oh, I didn't know that. There are many times I look up celebrities and they go, this person of Jewish parentage. Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't know they were Jewish. Oh, okay. Of Irish ancestry. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but that's interesting. Why didn't I know that? Because I can't tell just by looking at them. Diane Abbott is black. Blackety black, black, black. And she can't ever escape it. And she suffers racism about her blackness every single day of her life. Even the whitest of black people, whether that's an albino black person, they still or have the characteristics of blackness, so they can't really even escape being black. Michael Jackson, with his vitiligo, he was still always identified as a black man. You can't escape being black. If you're ginger, you can shave off your head. Do you know what? There are even black redheads, and I'm sure they suffer discrimination for having been redheads. So just like the albinos do suffer discrimination within the black community sometimes. But the redheads, do you know what they can do? They can shave off their head or they can colour their hair. They shouldn't have to, but they could. Many Jews tried to escape being caught by the Nazis by pretending to be a German or a non-Jew. How could they do that? Because you can't tell by looking at them. Try and tell a black person to pretend being a blonde, blue-eyed white person. It ain't gonna happen. Why? Because they're black.